Have you ever looked at someone that was addicted to drugs or alcohol with disgust and disdain? Have you ever seen news articles with the words accidental overdose and thought, well, if they didn't use, that wouldn't be a problem? Have you ever thought addiction was a choice that someone made or that they could stop if they wanted to? I've been guilty of all of these and more, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Welcome to the Stop the Stigma podcast, a podcast created to help stop the stigma surrounding substance use disorder by spreading awareness about substance use disorder and to give a voice to those suffering from it. This is episode number 1. I'm your host, Randall Gresham, and today I'm going to be talking about why I changed my mind about addiction. To be completely honest, I put a lot of thought in what my first episode was going to be about, but I figured this would be the best place to start because truthfully, if I didn't change my mindset about addiction, this podcast would not exist. The truth is, I used to be very ignorant of anything involving substance use disorder. I've heard of addiction, but I never heard of substance use disorder. And I always judged the people who used. I believe they deserve to be arrested for using and the actions that came from their using. I had always believed they were weak if they resorted to drug use, and it was even worse if they relapsed, because I always thought that was a sign of weakness. I also thought it was easy for them to quit it. They truly wanted to. I thought it would be easy for them. If I ever heard the term accidental overdose, I thought that was completely dumb because, what's an accidental overdose? That's how my mind worked before. And I kept this same mindset for years, even though I've had family that's had substance use disorder, that's not just drugs, but alcohol and other things as well. I've also had several classmates that died. I graduated in 2004, and I've had probably 10 classmates that died from drug overdoses, and I know many more that either still struggle to this day with some form of substance use disorder or have struggled with it and have gotten clean. I was entirely caught up in the stigma surrounding it. I believe what the media portrayed in movies and TV shows. To me, that's just how it was. I had no idea anything was any different. But my mindset finally changed in May of 2021. My wife had asked me to do a YouTube video about mental illnesses and how it affected the family. And I started researching different mental illnesses, but I never got around to actually making the video for reasons I will be discussing soon. Shortly into my research, I did discover something that completely blew my mind, and that was drug addiction is a mental disorder. I read it, then I read into it even more for an explanation, and found out that it often coexists with other mental disorders, including anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, PTSD, and other things such as trauma, chronic pain, loss like of a loved one or something, and genetics. When I learned this, I turned to my wife and told her, because she pretty much had the same mindset about addiction that I did. And this was news to her too. She had never read it or never heard of it herself. And it did help explain a lot about her mom, because her mom was addicted to her anxiety medicine. And she struggled for the better part of my wife's life with her addiction to the pills, and it made her resent her mom. She hated how her mom treated her when she was coming down from the substances, and she hated how spaced out her mom got when she was high on the medicine and whatever else she might have been using, because we know she used alcohol but not sure about anything else and besides other pills. She hated how her mom would stumble around, fall, slur. She hated everything about her mom's addiction, and she felt as though she wasn't good enough for her mom to stop. She felt as though her grandkids or children wasn't good enough for her mom to stop using. She built up 17 years of resentment, and truthfully, I resented her mom too, but probably not as much as she did. We knew her mom had anxiety. We knew her mom had depression, and at one point she was beat, she was robbed, she was raped, she had a bad back, she had lost a lot of loved ones, including her husband in 2013. We knew she had a rough life, but we never let this excuse her addiction. We still thought it was a sign of weakness, that apparently she should just deal with her life like anybody else does. This revelation about substance use disorder was just the start of my mindset shift. It wasn't complete. I still didn't know a whole lot about it. And truthfully, I didn't do a whole lot of research at that time. But about 2 weeks later, on May 22nd, 2021, I walked into her mom's house and I found her dead from an apparent overdose. And I remember walking outside and telling my wife, and her dropping to her knees, screaming, asking God to forgive her and her mom, asking why her mom was so selfish, and asking why her mom just couldn't stop. She felt hurt. She felt betrayed. She missed a mom that made her childhood great from the age of birth to like 13 or 14 years old. She missed all of that. And now she had lost both of her parents. And I remember sitting there right beside her and telling her that her mom wasn't selfish and she wasn't weak. And her mom was just sick, but now she was free. I mean, her mom wasn't hurting anymore. And then out of nowhere, I remember this woman just stopped in the middle of the road and started comforting my wife and telling her that she had just lost her, I forget how old the kid was. It was a very young kid, just a couple weeks before that happened. And this all happened 2 days after my wife's 30th birthday. And that moment right there, when I was kneeling in the grass with her, that's when I knew my mind shift had changed, because all of this stuff just came flooding out of me. Everything I told her about her mom not being weak and not being selfish and all of that all just came flooding out of me out of nowhere. And I reminded her of what I had just researched 2 weeks before, if it was even that long before all these events happened. Truthfully, this is a woman I despised, a woman I resented, and mostly because of how she treated my wife. I even had her mom as crazy lady in my phone, but she helped change my mindset on drug addiction, and it ignited a light in me that I have never felt before about any cause. This light and this passion is why this podcast exists. And if you have something that you're passionate about and have thought about starting a podcast of your own, please check out Buzzsprout. They will host your episodes and distribute them across all the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more. Following the link in the show notes lets Buzzsprout know I sent you, and it gets you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up with a paid plan, and it helps you support the Stop the Stigma channel. After her mom died, I spent hours researching different articles. I've listened to countless podcasts and books. Since then, I've learned a lot that I never knew. I've heard so many heartbreaking stories, and truthfully, many who suffer from substance use disorder have similar stories. They all start with something like major trauma or even minor trauma as a child or as a young adult. It can start by chronic pain, pre-existing mental illnesses, injuries, surgery. It can even start with doctor-prescribed meds. It can easily get hooked and addicted, even if they take them as they were supposed to. And this is what people need to understand. It's one of the things I myself have failed to understand. Stigma leads us to believe that it's all about getting high, and that's not the case for most people anyway. They want help, they want treatment, and their meds might not work anymore. They might run out, or they might get cut off from their meds. They might, at that point, just see it so desperate because it feels like they're dying inside because they don't have that medication anymore. What made them feel normal, what took their pain away, what took their anxiety away, whatever it was treating, they no longer have that, and it's just tearing them apart inside. They resort to whatever they can get that can possibly help them with that same thing. And if someone tells them they have a substance that can help them, that maybe they had anxiety and it helped them, or chronic pain and it helped them, they might try to take it and believe, hey, one time won't hurt. But then when they take it, hey, it helped better than the meds ever did. And then they use it again and again and again. And then before you know it, they get hooked on it. And yeah, it is a choice to start using. And yes, it is a bad choice. But they did it with good intentions. They did it to get help, not to become addicted. No one starts because they want to become addicted, or at least no one that I have ever heard of. Truthfully, I can go on for hours about substance use disorder, but I mean, I do want to leave content for other episodes, and I don't want to stray too far off topic. But I want to say this much. My eyes have been open, and I see this stigma now, and I see how wrong I was in believing in this stigma. Now, all of this, the discovery of substance use disorder being a mental illness, and then my mother-in-law dying, and all the information I found out since she's died, this is what changed my mind about substance use disorder. And my mission is to help others understand this too. Help them see the errors in their beliefs, in their judgment. I can't be mad at them because I know they are uninformed, just like I was. So I don't look down on them for their beliefs. It's just that we need to make a shield. We need to inform them, and that's why this podcast exists. Because there was 93,331 overdose deaths in 2020, and over 100,000 between April of 2020 and April of 21. And if we could stop the stigma surrounding substance use disorder, we could potentially open up a way for these people to get help and hopefully decrease these numbers, because not everyone that uses is a bad person. Most aren't. And if we stop locking them up simply for using and get them the help they need, because this is a medical condition, not a criminal act. They are not out harming, or they can, but most won't go out and harm people simply when they're using. They're using to treat themselves, not going out and purposely trying to hurt others. That can just be a repercussion of them using. Before I close out here, I want to ask you a question. If you believe in the stigma surrounding substance use disorder yourself, what changed your mind about addiction and substance use disorder? You can email me your answer at contact@sudstigma.com. I have the email in the description below, or you can find me on Facebook and message me on there. That link is below too. Remember, always carry Narcan, regardless if you or someone you know uses or not. You could save someone's life. If you or someone you know is suffering from substance use disorder, please call the National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357. It is free and confidential. The number will be in the description below. If you have a personal story you'd like to share about substance use disorder, regardless if it's your own struggle or the struggle of a family member, a friend, a coworker, or whoever, and you would like to share that story, there's a link in the description below where you can do just that. You have the option to remain completely anonymous if you so choose. Also remember to visit Stop the Stigma on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Stop the Stigma, and email any topic, guest suggestion, or questions to contact@sudstigma.com, or messages on any social platform. Finally, if you love listening to this podcast, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and kindly leave it a review on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast player so it can reach more people. Thanks for listening.